In our film opening, we used the thriller genre and decided to use the subgenre of psychological thrillers because of the inspiration we have had from Seven. This means that the psychology of the characters interested us, and so we tried to interpret those characteristics in our own film opening. The psychological thriller genre includes a variety of conventions such as flashbacks and torture scenes. Other psychological thrillers, like Seven, the characters try to determine what is true and what isn't within the narrative. This challenged us to think more about the characteristics of the main character. In addition to this, we were influenced by Taken, as we tried to use Liam Neeson's character, Brian Mills, as a character that we developed to fit the conventions of a thriller film, making our main character have a double personality. The anti-hero that we used in our film opening wears a white shirt that usually symbolizes that he is a hero. However, in this opening, he isn't doing something that is morally right. He is committing this crime because it is his job. This successfully meets the conventions of a thriller film because we included different characteristics and interpreted Brian Mills in Taken in a different way. The young girl wears a red coat which symbolizes the danger that she is about to be in. However, she is innocent as she does not know what is happening. The idea of femme fatale is demonstrated as she is feeling vulnerable and inferior to the strong male characters in this film opening that is emphasized and stereotyped.
Our first and main character, also known as a protagonist, is a retired hitman as well as a father to his daughter named Sarah. As with many hitmen that we see in films and games, the character tends to have a very aggressive nature due to the previous work that he has done. However, the opposite side to Trevor's personality is his affectionate side, due to him being a father of Sarah. This is shown through the anger expressed towards Ian because of his daughter's kidnapping. Overall, in our protagonist, we aim to put two character types into one, almost as a hybrid. We have the lethal ability of a retired hitman combined with a typical father who cares solely about his family. With the retired side of him, it shows that he is obviously older, sticking to the stereotype that older people tend to have more power and wisdom. The use of the knife links back to the sole care towards his family, and using the knife suggests a personal attack. The next character is Sarah, who is a character that we don't get to see very much of in the film opening. However, we as a group decided that she definitely plays a vital role. As we can see in the film opening, she is very young and quite visible in the red coat, which is our aim. We especially decided to use the red coat as it foreshadowed the events that followed because of the connotations of red, which include danger. The reason the character of Sarah represents social groups is that she is extremely vulnerable. In many thriller films, including Taken, the women always tend to be victims and tend to always need to be saved, which we tried to replicate in our film opening. Therefore, we were able to achieve this representation. The final visible character is Ian. This character is also a hitman who works for the same person, X, who Trevor previously worked for before he left. We instantly put quite similar stereotypes on Ian that we had for Trevor, as they both are hitmen, and therefore would only have very similar character traits. We also gave the name Agent 24 to Ian, as with most hitmen or people trying to hide their identity, they would not want their name to be visible. Some of our inspiration came from Hitman Absolution, the game, including the name, as we took ideas from Agent 47. In terms of costume with Ian, we tried to stay quite close to the game, so we used the shirt and tie. However, the tie was black and not red as seen in the game.
We all decided that Film 4 would be the best company to distribute our media product. This was because Film 4 is a well-known British company which distribute British films. Movies they were involved in were Limitless and Predators. These are popular action and thriller films similar to our film opening. Iconic landmarks in England make it a British film such as Waterloo Station. They produced a double which is also a thriller, and therefore it shows that Film 4 have a keen interest in thriller films, which is a key reason in why they would distribute our film. Film 4 is one of the biggest production companies in England, and they like to offer a distinctive range of mainstream and independent films, which is what our film is. Looking at Films 4 ethos, it is to support the newest and most striking creative voices and vision of tomorrow's cinema in Britain. Our film supports this ethos as our film is a British film, and we will and will be distributed around cinemas in Britain if it did. It also supports this because our film, Vendetta, is new and is a creative idea made from scratch. Another reason they may distribute our film is that Film 4 are responsible to distribute low-budget films, which is convenient for our film opening, and our film opening is low budget.
The audience for our media project is a range of people, however mainly males. This is because our thriller has a bit of action and violence in it, which usually appeals to males. Males are more likely to enjoy violence, like our torture scene, more than females. The age range will be about 15 to 18 years old. We know this because of the survey we carried out. We found out that 85% of the people we asked were about 15 to 18 years old. This shows that majority of the viewers will be in this age range. The secondary audience will be about 18 to 30 years old because our opening has a hint of psychological thriller, and they usually require more thought. Therefore, older people may understand it better than the younger audience. Females will also be a part of the audience. This is because we have a young, attractive male as our actor. Our film is rated at a 15. This is because it has violence, death, and may be harmful for younger viewers. We did not rate it at an 18 because it is not overly explicit, and it is not too much for 15-year-olds. Another film which is quite similar to ours is called The Equalizer, which is also rated at a 15. It has a lot of blood and violence and death, but it is not too much for the younger audience. We used a variety of ways to attract our audience, which were quite unique and interesting without it being too cliché. We used different codes and conventions of a typical thriller movie. During pre-production, we decided to add a lot of suspense and tension to make it more of a thriller. This keeps the audience on the edge of their seats and wanting more. We had a lot of tension, especially at the end of our opening. We decided to end it just before the gunshot goes off. Therefore, it leaves the rest to the audience to imagine what happened. This leaves the audience wanting more and more interested. Throughout our opening, it gives the audience a chance of escapism, as they do not get to view a torture or a kidnapping in reality. It gives the audience a chance to escape their lives and be a part of a thriller movie. Our opening looks very professional and does not seem amateur. This attracts the audience as our mise-en-scène was very good. For example, we used a range of locations, including Waterloo Station and an abandoned house. This adds to the escapism that the audience experiences. Furthermore, the range of camera shots makes the opening look less amateur and more professional. The sound, especially at the end, adds a lot to the tension and keeps the audience entertained and interested. Our audience has a few plot twists, which also keeps the audience on the edge of their seats. Thrillers usually have an element of mystery and disguise. We hid the identity of the character X to create even more tension. This use of tension keeps the audience wanting to know the rest of the story.
We filmed the entire opening with a Sony NEX F3 compact system camera. The reason we used this camera was because it was the best one that we had available to us, and it provided us with high resolution 1080p footage, which would really help us when it was shown on the big screen in class. The camera also had a 180-degree flipping screen on the back. This allowed us to get high angle and over-the-shoulder shots, as we were able to see the frame no matter what position the camera was in. Also, the LCD screen was very useful as it allowed us to crop our shots perfectly and make sure that we only showed on screen what we wanted to. Finally, I decided to use my 18 to 55mm zoom lens that allowed us to have the perfect shot without having to physically move the camera. During the production process, we also used the tripod to make sure that we had a stable shot and smooth pan for whenever we wanted to move the camera. In terms of audio, it was all taken directly from the camera's speaker. However, we decided to use a basic smartphone for the voiceover as it was the most efficient way of doing so. After all the shooting was done, we just had to edit at school. We decided to use Final Cut Pro as it was recommended to us by our teacher, and 2 members of the group had previous experience with it, which could be applied to make the film opening look the best it could be. With Final Cut Pro, we were able to get the right transitions and the right speed to make the opening flow as well as possible. We also decided that there needed to be some sort of blue hue on the flashback scene to remind the audience that it's quite a cold memory that has to be recalled. We also managed to achieve a blurred effect in Final Cut Pro, with the point of view shot used at the very beginning. This was very simple as we just duplicated the clip and reduced the opacity, however it really added to the impact of the opening overall. Finally, the software enabled us to add sound effects, like the dialing and the end call sounds, as well as the phone effect on the phone calls, which made everything a lot more realistic. As well as Final Cut Pro, we also use After Effects in our own time in order to create a production ident for the film opening. Although we knew it wasn't a necessity to the opening, we decided that we should still make one as it added an element of professionalism to the opening. And we also felt as if the ident we produced fitted very well and also gave us some basic knowledge with After Effects and using keyframes and particle effects. Lastly is sound. As mentioned, many of the sound effects came from Final Cut Pro. However, sounds like the punch and ringtone were taken from a royalty-free sound effect website, which was freesound.org.
As a group, we feel like we have improved and used different skills. We had 3 main objectives to complete in the preliminary task. Looking back at this task, for example the camera shots, it was very basic and was mainly just over-the-shoulder shots while in conversation. Now comparing the shots to our final film opening, we see that there are more movements which show a lot of things and make the audience contemplate. For example, the point of view shot, which is a very interesting shot to get the audience to sympathize with you. To make our film more professional and give it a cinematic look, we use things like focus, close-ups and other shots such as an establishing shot. In our prelim task, the mise-en-scène was not great as the lighting in our prelim was not consistent. Comparing this back to our film opening, we paid more attention to the mise-en-scène, for example the costumes and the location. The lighting in comparison to our prelim was much better as we used color correction, and this made it look more consistent. The torture scene, the lighting was also consistent as we did not maneuver with the light and kept the lighting as close to the camera as possible. This therefore adds flow and continuity to our final product. We did not pay much attention to other elements of mise-en-scène, for example the costumes. Therefore in our film opening we paid more attention to this to make sure it fit our genre and so there is continuity. We also used props such as a gun and a watch to help represent the typical conventions of the thriller genre. Looking back at the ending of our prelim task, we saw how we used cuts and editing techniques. Compared to our film opening, we saw that we used a variety of transitions such as cuts, fades and blackouts to create an effect on the audience such as tension, and this also helped it flow better. Although the preliminary task was only 30 seconds, it gave us a strong foundation to help build upon, helping us to make a better film opening.